But let's come on in and close out the day. I think we had some really interesting conversations. I've just been thinking today as I've been listening to how people talk to think, that it's been so interesting thinking about employee ownership this past couple of days and sort of in terms of purpose and what are we trying to accomplish? How does the world look different for employee ownership? And it's been really interesting hearing people's discussions of that and even talking about, let's start with purpose in mind and think about sort of strategy and policy with respect to how we want things to be different, how we want to close the racial wealth gap, how we want to close the wealth gap in general, how we want to think about improving people's lives and livelihoods, how we want to have more participation in civic life and in our communities as well as in our businesses. So really interesting thinking about sort of the broader purpose. And on the flip side, there's also been a lot of really devils in the details kind of conversations. And how do we not get distracted by too many details and figure out which are the right details to focus on and move? So just personally have a lot to reflect on from all of this conversation. And I'm really excited to now have our 5 final speakers come up and share sort of some of their big ideas and reflections on employee ownership. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say all 5 in the order that is in my agenda. So that's the order that I'm going to ask them to talk. And I'll introduce them and they can turn the mic over to each other as they're done. So you guys got to listen so you know when you come up. So first, we're very happy to have Christine Curella, former senior policy advisor to Deputy Mayor of New York City, an economic development consultant, and Aspen Institute Job Quality Fellow. Glad you're with us, Christine. After Christine, we'll have Jason Wiener, President Jason Wiener, member, Colorado Employee Ownership Commission, Executive Fellow, Rutgers Institute for the Study of Employee Ownership and Profit Sharing. You notice how we claim them all and make their titles immensely longer. After Jason, we have Wilma Liebman, former National Labor Relations Board Chair, Senior Fellow, Rutgers Institute for the Study of Employee Ownership and Profit Sharing. I thought there was also some NYU thing there too, but maybe we abbreviated. After Wilma, Evan Edwards, Chief Executive Officer, Project Equity, and last but certainly not least, Chris Griswold, Policy Director, American Compass. So those are our 5 closeout speakers. Excited to hear from all of them. And Christine, let's start with you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Maureen. And it's such a joy to be with so many collaborators and to see so many familiar faces. Really proud to advance this agenda alongside all of you. I come to this work having spent over 9 years in economic development in the city of New York, everything from real estate investment to our minority and women-owned business program, my last role advancing community wealth building and employee ownership in the de Blasio administration. Over the last 2 years, I've worked to advise a number of municipal leaders across the country, over 60 city leaders from Maine to Alaska, Indiana, Florida, Arkansas, Oklahoma, in between, many political stripes. And needless to say, so many of them are looking to alternatives to winner-take-all economics, right? The big Amazon deals coming to their communities, the attempts to look like Silicon Valley. And so for them, the big idea of employee ownership is not a hard sell. The question they ask is, so what is the toolkit? How do I bring that to my community? And I'll be honest, that was the same question I had. And we spent a lot of time building the plane as we were flying it in New York City Hall. And so, very proud of the many investments we've made in city centers and state centers. But I think there's a big opportunity for us to tap cities as the place to catalyze employee ownership. And I want to talk a little bit about what that might look like. I want to start by taking a page from the affordable housing field, what's been developed in communities, the partnerships between municipalities, states, and the federal government over the last 50 years. Believe me, I know housing is in a bit of a crisis at this moment, but those policy levers stand, and they offer us some opportunities. Take first the opportunity of first-time home buyers assistance. think about that for employee ownership. How might we capitalize workers to buy into the places where they work? Things like unemployment insurance. In New York, we've been working to support entrepreneurs in building business plans. It's a smaller version of unemployment insurance. But what might that look like as a capital tool to allow buy-in, right? So that we don't ask folks to deduct employee stock purchase plans from their wages or membership buy-in for co-ops. Michigan has legislation that reduces the individual income tax burden for individuals who invest in companies. This is for everyone, non-accredited investors. How might we think about that tool, state income deductions to incentivize employee ownership? In cities, real estate is our biggest lever. How might we use real estate incentives and property tax abatements to incentivize employee ownership or to reward the good actors and employee-owned businesses that are in our communities? Thinking about sector approaches, what regulatory and licensing tools give local governments say in business operations? And how might we inform businesses or incentivize businesses to convert to employee ownership? In New York, and a huge testament to the ESOP community, we've been able to move legislation to get engineering and professional services firms to be eligible as ESOPs. It had previously been unallowed in their certification. We issued guidance and worked in the weeds of contracting so that eligible co-ops could be certified as minority or women-owned businesses in the city of New York, and worked really hard to get contracts. We were in the process of certifying the 2 largest worker co-ops in the country as minority and women-owned businesses, unlocking that opportunity. Where businesses may close or be in non-compliance, might there be a right to first refusal for workers, like the tenant movement has worked to build tenant opportunity to purchase? And last week, $20 billion of investment was announced in green sectors from here in DC to local communities. That's going to be transforming the built environment in every single community. What is our green strategy for building ownership? All of the businesses that are going to be delivering those services. Certainly, we have to think about finance and the finance tools of policymakers. We need new agencies, secondary markets to free up capital for employee ownership. Aspen's been working to help build a secondary market in CDFIs. There's a venture called ScaleLink that's been doing that work. What does that mean for giving us the capital we know we need in communities to scale up employee ownership? Colorado and Maryland have municipal bonds for business lending. Really exciting. We actually have been trying to do that in New York City. Again, this is non-capital municipal bonds. It's a really big deal. Maybe you're not as excited about bond markets as I am, but we spoke to the bond issuers. I was on the phone with Jefferies. They thought this was a whole new category of bonds. They were really excited about it. And what I want to say from the public perspective about finance is that we need to rethink our capital stack. And so to use another city metaphor, I want to think about a bike lane. We often use our public finance to build a bike lane to protect parked cars and oncoming traffic and not people. And similarly, most of our public finance for catalyzing business has been protecting banks and asset holders and not workers or employee-owned companies. And so as I offer, the billions of dollars we should be thinking about employee ownership, we also need to really rethink the guardrails and put workers and businesses first in that capital arrangement. And there's some amazing examples of integrated capital. I again want to look to affordable housing. The Wu administration in Boston has put renters first. Governance whereby renters make decisions and have aggregated $47 million worth of capital around that, including from traditional lenders. So I'll just say, like the affordable housing movement over the last 50 years has perfected policy tools in place, we too need to think about the policy tools that can unlock employee ownership. And I believe ownership is of interest to so many municipal leaders. Cities are ready to build if we can offer them the new municipal toolkit for employee ownership. I hope you'll work with me for that. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to tell you a story about my adoptive home state in Colorado. By way of introduction, my name is Jason. I'm the founding partner of Jason Weiner PC. We're a boutique law and business consulting firm focused on broad-based ownership, cooperatives, regenerative finance, and general counsel for hundreds of clients a year. I'm also the founding commissioner of the Employee Ownership Commission and the inaugural chair of the same. Today, I'd like to tell you a story of genuine collaboration, innovative leadership, commitment, inclusive representation, and community empowerment that has set Colorado as a national beacon in the realm of employee ownership. In recent years, Colorado has embarked on a pioneering journey, one that has redefined the landscape of business ownership and participation across the state. The journey began with stalwart role models such as Namaste Solar, New Belgium Brewing, and the inspiration of the Center for Community Wealth Building, which caught the attention of then Congressman Jared Polis, who served my district. I, along with community and business leaders, began advising now Governor Polis about employee ownership in 2013. We shared a vision of a more equitable, sustainable, and resilient economy through promotion of all employee ownership models. It's a vision that recognized the invaluable role of our local workforce and keeping business ownership local as the keys to success and business longevity. This spoke directly to Governor Polis's own business experience, marked by building, growing, and exiting several successful e-commerce businesses, all of which he tells us had some form of employee or equity ownership. In 2019, following months of briefings, meetings with cabinet members, and community coalition advocacy, Governor Polis, within the first 100 days, in fact, on the 100th day, at an employee-owned grocery store in Colorado Springs, signed an executive order that created the Colorado Employee Ownership Commission and charged us to promote the employee ownership across the state, reduce barriers and obstacles to employee ownership, and create a cadre of professional services and a support ecosystem to help Colorado companies thrive and become employee-owned. With the leadership and guidance of the Employee Ownership Commission and the key support of our Office of Economic Development and International Trade, we've created and now administer several innovative programs. They not only focus on conversions, but encompass comprehensive support through education, financial incentives, and community building. The introduction of the Colorado Employee Ownership Tax Credit in 2021 is a first-in-the-nation initiative, which has subsequently been expanded to provide more than $50 million in tax credits for businesses converting to employee ownership. It underscores our commitment to reducing the financial barriers associated with conversion. We pair that with a cash collateral support program, and we've established several peer networking groups to further exemplify the holistic and wraparound approach necessary to fostering an environment and culture where employee-owned businesses can thrive. Colorado is also the first state in the country to codify the substantive characteristics of employee ownership in a way that is form agnostic, paving the way for companies that meet a rigorous legal standard to gain access to important benefits, recognition, and more. We've made these tax credits available for staged conversions that happen over time, as well as for co-ops and other holding companies that are growing through inorganic acquisition activity. Since the inception of these initiatives, we've witnessed a remarkable surge in employee ownership conversions. From a modest trend of 1 to 3 per year, we've seen a dramatic increase to 63 companies converting since 2021. This is not just a number. It represents a significant shift in our economic fabric, promoting higher wages, job security, and a more engaged workforce, while ensuring business owners have a viable succession plan and a means to attract and retain key talent. With 6 in 10 business owners in the United States planning to retire or sell their business within the next decade, and a stark realization that only a small fraction of businesses are passed on to the next generation or sold, Colorado faced an imminent need to act. Colorado is also home to several cutting-edge sectors in transition: outdoor recreation, cannabis, aerospace, tech, and now natural medicine healing. We recognize the potential for employee ownership to fill this void and provide an important anchor for community stability, providing an avenue for business continuity while safeguarding the livelihoods of our workforce. We also realize the power and potential of getting companies into a broad employee ownership tent, which then makes it easier for them to up-level their employee ownership plan in the future. The impacts of our efforts have been profound. The majority of applicants for our tax credit program are from rural Colorado, highlighting the far-reaching benefits of the policy. Additionally, through our grant program, we facilitated 21 employee ownership conversions, predominantly through worker cooperatives, distributing significant funds to these transitions which otherwise struggle to access the necessary capital. We're partnering with the Minority Business Office to ensure access and relevance to disinvested communities and communities of color. We're also partnering with our SBDCs and the local SBA offices to ensure up-to-date information disseminated through their broad networks. Employee and broad-based ownership has been my life's work over the past 15 years, and the majority of time I've been a lawyer. The journey in Colorado towards becoming a leader in employee ownership is a testament to the power of vision, imagination, collaboration, and action. We continue to build on our accomplishments, but we invite others to point to, critique, and build on our model for economic innovation and social equity. This is led by, guided, and centers on the impact that this work has on communities and through the businesses that are revitalized through the power of ownership. I want to thank you for your attendance at this event and look forward to continuing into the evening. Wilma, I invite you up. Thank you.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. I guess by way of a big idea, what I'd like to do is revive a big idea from a century or so ago, and that's the idea of industrial democracy. So about 10 years ago, I heard a labor historian give a talk about labor during the First World War. And he said the big idea at that time was industrial democracy, which was said to be the answer to the labor question. Massive unemployment, massive inequality, labor unrest, political agitation. But what industrial democracy meant had many different meanings. So to some, and some new national unions, it meant worker ownership, disregarding the wage system and workers owning the factories and the means of production. To some unions, the beginning of the American Federation of Labor, it meant collective bargaining. To employers, it meant other things, welfare capitalism, works councils, different kind of profit-sharing plans. Ultimately, in the 1930s, our nation adopted collective bargaining as our answer to industrial democracy. And it worked for a while. That's how I spent most of my career, working for 2 international labor organizations and then spending nearly 14 years as a member of the National Labor Relations Board. But since then, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot more things. And through my good friends at Rutgers, I got exposed to the wide variety of forms of worker ownership. I picked up on Jason's phrase, form agnostic. And so I probably the biggest dilettante in worker ownership in this room, because I've had just little touches of different things. The variety that I've learned about at Rutgers, the cooperative platforms that have sprung up, and particularly with the gig economy. And David Rolfe and his local have an interesting form of a purpose trust for a healthcare institution. I don't know the details of these, and I'm not here to argue for one form or another. I am form agnostic. But what I think is most exciting about what's going on, particularly in the wake of our intersecting crises and the crisis of democracy, is the experimentation, again, with old forms of industrial democracy, different forms of worker ownership. I've had the privilege for the last few years of being involved with Ownership Works. I think you heard from Annalisa earlier, and I'll just tell you a little anecdote. So I got called by the New York Times economics reporter Lydia DePillis about Ownership Works, and she said to me, kind of interested that you would do this because this is private equity involved, and you're a known worker advocate, so why are you doing this? And so I gave her the history lesson about worker ownership and my sense that experimentation and exploration is very much needed at this time, and that we have a very complex economy, so all different forms of organization and governance models, ownership models, there's room for all that kind of experimentation. I don't know which is going to work, but we'll find out. But she said, the worker ownership people don't think this is real worker ownership. And I said, I'm too old for ideological purity. So my big idea really is just to experiment with all these different forms of worker ownership coupled with real worker role in governance, which I think is so critical.
Good afternoon. I'm Evan Edwards, CEO of Project Equity. Before I get started here today, I want to thank Maureen and Matt and the team here at Aspen for the opportunity to be here before you. It's a real privilege. So my big idea won't come as a surprise to those of you I've spoken with over the years, and you've become familiar with my thoughts. In a few words, it's time to bring employee ownership to the mainstream, to make employee ownership as familiar and as much a part of the business ecosystem, M&A strategies, and the national vernacular as terms like publicly traded company, union shop, and startup. We want individuals to aspire to be employee owners. We want business owners to have in mind an EO succession path before one of us practitioners reaches out to them. There are a number of paths to mainstream that my organization, Project Equity, is pursuing. I'm going to highlight 3 for you today, and I look forward to partnering with folks in this room to drive these efforts forward. Number 1, we have to bring employee ownership into the work streams of the professional service providers who engage with business owners. That's the CPAs, CFPs, exit planners, M&A advisors, attorneys. We want to move as many of these folks as possible beyond simple awareness of EO to practical and practicable knowledge such that an EO transition or transaction is top of mind when their clients are seeking strategic operating advice or exit paths. Now, I've heard a number of folks over the last 2 days express the importance of educating professionals, so I know there's agreement on this. At Project Equity, we call this work Service Provider Adoption, or SPA. To achieve this, we're developing educational content to enable business advisors in EO. I'm proud to share that our first release, Exit Pro, has achieved accreditation from a number of important bodies, including the Exit Planning Institute, EPI. So now, if you're a professional advisor and need to update your certification or seeking continuing education credits, you can now do so learning about EO. And y'all can check out Exit Pro at our website, projectequity.org. And if you've got questions about Exit Pro, also, Stacy, raise your hand. My colleague, Stacy Smith, who leads our program work, can answer questions about it later over a cocktail. So that brings me to the second path to mainstreaming employee ownership, and that involves embedding it in higher education. This is a longer tail proposition, but a very important one, especially as relates to younger generations of Black, brown, and other people of color, so they understand the wealth-building opportunity EO can provide. Anecdotally, we've seen Gen Z, so those folks 11 to 26 years of age, indicate more interest in and a predisposition to shared ownership models that prior generations whereas prior generations more often admired or aspired to be a hero entrepreneur. By bringing forward employee ownership awareness and understanding to large numbers of both undergraduate and MBA students, and through both curriculum and programmatic offerings, we can see future generations who will accept, engage, promote, and pursue EO models in their post-academic lives. EO will be a business norm to them. It'll be mainstream. I like to think of EO as entrepreneurship 2.0 for many folks, and particularly communities of color, that may lack access to capital, generational wealth, or networks to engage traditional entrepreneurship. At Project Equity, through our partnership with Morehouse College and our Black Employee Ownership Initiative, we're pursuing embedding EO in higher ed. Our strategy includes engaging other HBCUs this year and at least one prominent MBA program, with pipeline development for others to follow. The third and probably most far-reaching path to mainstreaming employee ownership has our field moving beyond awareness raising to also executing very intentional and strategic marketing and advertising of employee ownership. In other words, we need to sell EO to the broader public. Americans learn about, adopt, and reference new products, services, brands, and business models through marketing and media. Consider most Americans were not familiar with AI a year ago, or crypto 4 years ago, or startups 30 years ago. With the support of the Candida Fund, Project Equity, and founding partners Evergreen Cooperative, Nexus Community Partners, and ICA Group were able to launch the EO Equals brand campaign. Now, as governing partners of EO Equals, Project Equity with Evergreen Cooperative are working to elevate the EO brand. So in service to the EO Equals brand campaign, Project Equity has produced what is, to my knowledge, the first broadcast-ready 30-second commercial advertisement for employee ownership, which we plan to air first across digital platforms and then next year linear television. When I wrap up my comments shortly, and I just got the 30-second notice, I'm excited for everyone to go to eoequals.org and take a look at it. We'd appreciate your comments. Today is the first public display. I'd be tempted to say it's the world premiere. That'd be a little over the top. But this is the first time that this advertisement will be seen, and we hope it's seen nationally many, many, many millions of times, by many, many millions of eyes going forward. At Project Equity, we're proud of this work and our other efforts to lift up employee ownership in the national consciousness through video and audio storytelling, data releases, and other messaging. And we're really excited to bring forward a powerful campaign for EO, including one we're calling the New Face of Entrepreneurship. I invite folks in this room, your organization and enterprises, to partner with Project Equity and Evergreen on EO Equals. And I know all of our practitioners will look forward to no longer hearing the frustrating remark that EO is the best business solution I never heard of. With that, I'll close. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Griswold. I'm the Policy Director at American Compass. We're a think tank whose mission is to restore an economic consensus that puts workers, their families, their communities, and their industries back at the center of our economic analysis and policymaking. I was asked to share my one big idea that I'm most energized by when it comes to employee ownership. I only have 5 minutes. I can only talk about one thing, so I figured I better talk about Aristotle. Wilma, I see your 100-year-old idea. I'll raise you 2,300 years. Aristotle wrote a lot about how societies work, what makes them function or fail. One of his ideas was what he called civic friendship. That's the term he used to describe the sense of goodwill between a group of people, one for another, that emerges when that group of people has a sense of shared common purpose in a shared project. In the case of civic friendship, a shared political project, a shared community. That's what he thought allowed societies to remain whole rather than devolve into tribal conflict and warfare. And for Aristotle, that experience of a sense of common purpose wasn't some grand spiritual kind of thing. It was very practical. He thought the most practical and pragmatic place to experience that sense of mutual interdependence was in economic life, was in the workplace, where we, in a very pragmatic way, encounter that we need each other and are needed by one another. I think civic friendship is a pretty good description of something that America quite conspicuously lacks these days, because civic friendship in the Aristotelian sense only works if people really do believe and feel that they are, in fact, partners in a shared economic project, not just a unit of production that is being deployed for the benefit of someone else. Fast forward 2,300 years to Martin Luther King, who said much the same thing. There's a great book that collects his speeches to the labor movement you should take a look at. And if you read it, you'll see that he was very insistent that while access to the ballot box was extremely vital and necessary, it was not enough on its own to realize the unrealized dream of American democracy. The ability to fully participate in the economic life of the nation, to be enfranchised and to have a voice economically was also essential if American democracy was going to survive. Tommy Shelby is a philosopher who writes a lot about Martin Luther King. Put it this way: when you're sharing a society with others, you have to share not just in the burden, but the benefits of that common form of life. There is no way for you to see yourself as an equal when even your most basic material needs have less weight than others' access to $4 million penthouses in New York. He wrote that a while ago. $4 million won't get you as far as it used to in Manhattan. That's why I love employee ownership so much. Because it doesn't matter just that we solve the pressing economic problems that we're facing, like widening inequality, which a majority of Americans, including a strong majority of the working class, including a strong plurality of self-identified Republicans, I think is a major problem. It's not just important that we solve wage stagnation. You know, it now takes more weeks of earnings for the average worker to afford a middle-class family's lifestyle than there are weeks in the year. It's not just that we need to do something about the offshoring of good jobs or the issues of financial precarity that face working families, all of which, as you heard these 2 days, are issues that employee ownership can speak to. It doesn't matter just that we solve them, it matters how we solve them. Because we're also facing another fundamental problem that's come up in the course of these conversations, which is that a majority of American workers that really do feel disenfranchised and powerless in the economy because they are. And unless we solve that problem, unless that problem is substantially addressed, our fraying social fabric will continue to fray, and our faith in democracy will continue to decline, and our sense of civic friendship will be at risk. So that's my big idea, that we remember that as we all go back to our respective work in this space, that the term ownership doesn't just have a legal sense or a financial sense, as in the right to share in the profits of a profitable enterprise. Ownership also has a civic sense, as in a sense of ownership in our shared economic and civic life. A sense that national economic life really is a shared project, that we are all in together as partners, that all of these meanings of the term ownership belong together. And then, and this is what I get so excited about, to take that sense back to the practical work of making this stuff real in policy and the other places we work, and get jazzed about just how valuable employee ownership can be as a tool that helps us solve that problem, as one of the ways we might try and enhance a sense of genuine participation as partners in the American economy. Thank you.